Well, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the Tower of Adversity has just gone through its first reset after going by the new monthly schedule. And it's fair to say that this reset might be the most tailored one we've ever seen. And by tailored, I mean that these buffs are basically spot on, perfect for the newest limited characters that have come to the roster, but they're kind of just not very good for anybody else. While there are like a couple of standouts, specifically in the middle tower, that might be able to benefit a lot more compared to other members of the roster, it's safe to say that buffs like your heavy attack, increasing the attack of all resonators in the team and increasing their basic attack damage, this buff is specifically tailored to a character like Rosia, who's going to be supporting a character like Camellia. This is one of the most specific buffs we've ever seen, because who else is really going to be spamming heavy attacks, right? And then buffing characters in their team that are doing basic attack damage. The only other one that I might be thinking of potentially is a Dan Jin, who's using their Chaos Cleave, their Forte enhanced heavy attack, and then maybe buffing a Camellia or a Havoc Rover. But Dan Jin only uses one of those heavy attacks in rotation, and this stacks up to 3 times. It's clearly tailored for a Rosia. It's clearly tailored for her. And that's only the first example of where we're seeing buffs like this. The second one is, of course, going to be on the right side. And over here, you're going to see something that kind of only works for Carlotta. This is going to be upon casting a Resonance Liberation, which Carlotta does, in fact, cast 4 times in her kit and in her rotation. Their attack is going to be increased by 5%, and they'll gain a 10% Resonance skill damage bonus for just 3 seconds. Only 3 seconds. So the character, to receive the maximum buffs, will need to cast 4 resonance liberations within 3 seconds of each other. The only character in the game that is able to do that is Carlotta. There is no other character in the game that's going to be able to cast that many resonance liberations in that short of a time frame. And I gotta say, this buff in particular, I pray to God we never see this one again. I actually pray to God we never see a bonus or a buff like this ever again, because it is almost like the Kuro devs looked into Carlotta's kit and decided to come up with something that literally nobody else on the roster was really going to get meaningful benefits from. They first have to cast a Resonance Liberation and then use a skill afterwards. Maybe Jinsei can get like slight use of it if she times her liberation, but you only got 3 seconds. And the buff's going to be 5% attack and 10% resonance skill damage. That is pathetic. That is kind of pathetic. So we got the Jinsei as one of the potential users. Jinsei's not on this account. Maybe Chang Li will be able to get some benefit from it too. Who knows? I'm not really particularly sure about that one. But you can play around with this. It's pretty clear you're supposed to use Carlotta over here. And now it's time for the big one. Now it's time for the middle tower. What is supposed to be the most challenging out of all of the 3 stages. And this one's going to be when any resonator receives healing, so healers can actually use it, the attack of all resonators in the team is increased by 30% for 20 seconds. The middle tower, ladies and gentlemen, is actually the most universal one out of all of them. And I have to say that even though it does have a specific effect of requiring a shield to get this critical damage increase, at the very least, right, when you use a character like Shorekeeper, when you use a character like Verena, when you use one of these 2 characters, you will be able to receive the attack buff. So all is not lost, and in 90% of teams, right, Shorekeeper or Verena is being used. And of course, this buff overall is specifically tailored to Brandt. There's no lie. It is tailored to Brandt. He is one of the only characters in the game that A, heals the team, but that also provides a shield too. However, it's not just Brandt that can give these full buffs to the team. There's actually somebody else. There's actually 2 other characters that can give full buffs to the team. And ladies and gentlemen, you might be a little bit surprised. These characters that can give the buff to the team, they're going to be Jiang Xin, Yan Wu, and Tao Chi. Slotting in either of these 3 characters into your team will allow you to enable those full buffs. Tao Chi can do it all solo. And the reason why Tao Chi can do this all solo is pretty simple. Okay, I'm gonna mute her. The reason why Tao Chi is able to activate all of these solo is because she heals herself when she uses her resonant skill. So she activates the healing attack bonus, and then she also provides a shield to the team after using her Forte circuit, which is typically activated after you use an intro skill on her. She'll enter the field with 3 of her Forte circuit stacks and then spam basics to get them all off and provide a shield to the team. So she is single-handedly able to provide this benefit. If you want to use her, I would recommend use Tao Chi with a character like Carlotta. A character like Carlotta or a character like Shang Li. You'll be able to buff their resonant skill damage and get some work going. Another character that will be able to activate these buffs is of course going to be John Shin, because John Shin has a shield on her Forte circuit, takes a fucking while to activate, and her shield heals too. You can also put the Originite gauntlets on her and put her on the Rejuvenating Glow set to have her as a bit more of a support, but it's kind of like just out of the meta nowadays. But if you do want to bring it back to gain some of those benefits from the tower, keep that in mind. And Yan Wu, of course, is a potential user as well. You just have to have a couple of his sequence nodes, specifically his 4th one, because his 4th node gives a shield to the on-field character after he uses his liberation. And with him on, with the Originite gauntlets, he will be able to heal himself and then trigger the effects. So this version of the tower is a little bit, dare I say, slightly predatory. From the perspective of the middle tower does have the most universal buffs. The middle tower does have buffs that many other users on the roster, aside from Brant, can access. But these side towers, their buffs are absolutely insane. These buffs are fucking completely cooked. I'm of the opinion that these buffs are not good for the game, and they should be worded in a way where, like, why need to cast your Resonance Liberation 4 times? Why not just provide, like, a ramping buff after casting it once so other characters can use it? Why have a character that needs to heavy attack 3 times and then buffs basic attack damage? Like, surely there's some other way that we can promote like Rosia and Camellia together without a buff that's like this inaccessible. The reason why I say it's not super predatory is pretty simple. These side towers are easy. They're not hard. These side towers, their max is at level 90, and they don't require a massive amount of investment to clear, and it's not going to be like not having this buff is going to prevent you from clearing. However, if you are lesser invested, if you have like level 80 characters, using these buffs will actually let you clear. And so this is more so not really a barrier for veteran players, but this is a much bigger barrier for like free to play or like newer players to the game. And so definitely something to keep in mind in the future. I think having way more accessible buffs that are more general and not this specific is really something that we should be doing in these side towers. I don't see why they're this specific when veteran players with fully built character kits or fully built characters won't struggle with these anyways. This kind of only hurts newer players to the game. Genuinely, it only hurts newer players to the game. And so with that, let's go ahead and take a look. Well, all right, I've been on it for a while. Let's take a look at some of the newer bosses. We're gonna have the Chop as the first mobs that'll show up over here, and the new Dragon of Dirge. We'll be taking a look at that once we get there. In the middle of the tower, we're gonna be having the Thundering Mephis. Bit of a staller. He teleports around a lot and is a bit annoying, but at least doesn't have iframes like the Tempest does. And then a stage with the Cyan Feathered Heron, the Gale Scourge Stalker, and then the Wind Gorilla. This should be a lot easier relatively to some of the other tower floors that we've had, because the Gorilla is undoubtedly an easy boss. He's one of the easiest bosses in the game. Very easy to hit, has pretty much full DPS uptime windows on every character against him. He does have some mobs at the start, but these aren't like a huge deal. These aren't like crazy mobs either. And on the right side, for the final stage, we will be having the Mech Abomination. And this guy he's a complete joke. If you learn his moveset, he attacks like once a calendar year. While his attacks do a lot of damage, they are incredibly, absurdly easy to dodge, and so you shouldn't have too much troubles. I would say the hardest stage is going to be the Dragon of Dirge, simply due to the fact that, well, nobody really knows what this guy does, because when we fight the Dragon of the Dirge in Overworld, we blow it up in like 2 seconds. So I'm excited to see how that one pans out. So with that, we've talked a little bit about some of the potential teas. We talked a little bit about some of the potential lineups. Let's actually do a clear on a viewer's account. So we'll be starting off in the middle tower. And for some information on the buffs, you'll have a decrease to Spectral Resistance and Fusion Resistance while having an increase to Electro and Arrow. And so you're heavily prioritizing, right, characters like a Chang Li, an Encore, a Jinxie, or even like a Phoebe when you're approaching these. I'll go ahead, I'll grab a Carlotta, and we'll see how it works out. There's no Glacial resistant enemies here as far as I'm concerned. Why not grab a Tao Chi too and gain the full benefits of all these buffs? Let's do that. And she's on the naked build. She has almost no investment at all. She's got 0 out of 0, 0, 0 on everything. I might level up her Forte circuit a little bit so that we have a bit more of like a comprehensive shield. I won't be using too much mats though. It'll be fine.
Stay calm. The feeling of pain. No biggie, just a scratch. Now it's my turn.
And we're just building up Concerto on both of our supports. The rotation is unfortunately a little bit slower on Tao Chi. She isn't the fastest character ever, but we do have the shielding and we do have the healing active, so we should be doing some pretty big damage to this Mephis. And I would say this is kind of like the go-to team if you are going to be using Tao Chi. There's kind of nobody else on the roster that Tao Chi really supports well in this sort of hyper carry fashion. And as you can see, pretty decent damage. I don't think this Carlotta has like a lot of sequence nodes. She's a pretty typical one. 270. And just getting more of that stuff off. Yeah, this Carlotta to me didn't look like extremely high investment. And we don't really have any buffs. At least from the resistance side.
Attack is the best
Getting some smooth rotations off.
How reliable. Running won't save you.
And we should be good to go. Just 2 rotations, and I do think that the Mephis is going to disappear here.
Masterpiece complete. Take this.
Maybe 2.5.
Still recognize me.
Maybe 2.5.
Ordained.
Yeah, it's... I mean, you can count that as 2, right? Surely we can. Surely we can count that as 2.
I got your back. Victory, guide my blade. How reliable.
I probably didn't even need to do that rotation. I wasted a lot of time on Tao Chi. But as you can see, we do 2 rotations and the guy is basically wiped out. We had time for the 3rd one. No real issues here. Not a challenging clear. Of course, we are using Carlotta, but we're not using her with Jeja. We're using her with a level 60 Tao Chi on Discord with absolutely no investment at all in her skill tree. So she's not doing any damage either. And the Carlotta with the full buffs does have stats like this. We saw an 85-303. That's heavily overstating what her actual investment is. This is what that Carlotta's investment looked like outside of the tower. 76.6. 273.8 on static mist. We don't even have her signature. We don't even have her signature, and that's what the clear looked like. So tell me, Tao Chi and Carlotta, very good. We're at S0 with no sig, and we were able to get basically a 2 rotation clear. This is a super relatable build. This has to be one of the most relatable Tao Chis in gacha gaming, if I'm frankly being honest. And we just had a regular shorekeeper, right?
I am here
on variation, R4. This is a pretty just basic team. This isn't anything nuts. We've taken a look at the first stage of the middle tower. Now let's do a couple more clears. And with some of those boosts to the healing, with some of those boosts to Spectro, we're going to be using a Phoebe team for this side against the AoE start and the Gorilla. So let's just go ahead. Let's see how the cookie crumbles here. We got Spectro Rover and Phoebe ready to go.
Noticing fruit of luminous energy.
I sense your weakness.
All right, getting some decent AoE off. This is kind of like a decent spread of enemies. Do keep that in mind. But Phoebe's AoE is pretty awesome.
Give me strength.
So even without those Spectral Frazzle debuffs, everybody. And do make sure to swap over to Rover, right? When you do need to. To extend that debuff time and actually let Phoebe, you know, deal damage.
Swift and resolute. Strike in the shadows.
And then just run through your entire team's rotation.
Swift and resolute. No, the end has come.
And your second one's just going to come out faster, right? Because your Rover's just building up Concerto. And as you can see, the time on with Phoebe is pretty good, even without some sweaty quick swap gameplay like this, where you're, you know, you can like alternate through, make it a little bit spicy. No big deal. Keep those Spectral Frazzle stacks up, but at the end of the day,
Swift and resolute. Strike. Moment of resonance.
Sentinel protects me.
you'll clear. Phoebe is pretty good here. And to keep this in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we cleared with that team. We weren't receiving any benefit at all from that crit damage buff. Absolutely no benefit at all from that crit damage buff because there was no shield active on that team. However, there is a bit of a tech. If you are, for some reason, trying to trigger a shield on your healer by interrupting an attack, you can use the Rocksteady Guardian's Echo skill. If you really want to get, like, weird with it, the Thundering Mephis does have a move that you can cancel. And if you do cancel it, you will gain a shield equal to 30% of your max HP. So you can try it out if you want to. I don't think it's necessarily worth the effort. You might think that the Bellborn Geochalone might work too, but the Bellborn Geochalone doesn't actually provide a shield. It provides damage reduction, not an actual like shield that mitigates damage. It just gives like 3 ticks of DR. So that's an entirely different thing that they have going on over here. That's going to be the middle tower. Nothing too crazy. I will say there's a lot of grouping you need to do, or a lot of grouping you want to do for this first stage. So a character like Phoebe that just kind of hits everybody indiscriminately is going to be somebody that works out pretty well. Not a huge deal here. However, Rosia, also good. And you also do have Gion, but I don't recommend him at all because of error resistance. Camellia Rosia is also a fantastic option over here, or you can just work on grouping the enemies too. Now, it's time to get into the left side. And this is where stuff gets a little bit spicy. And this is obviously the team that really prefers Camellia. But instead of necessarily just using her straight up, let's go ahead. Let's try something maybe a little bit more unique. These are fusion resistant enemies. And so using Chang Li with Zhang Liao over here might be a little bit funky. The Zhang Liao is pretty well built. Let's just use the Zhang Liao hypercarry team. And we'll see how you do when you don't really have those heavy attacks and you're not really benefiting from the basic attack buffs. So we got an Empyrene Anthem set ready to go, and we'll be able to bring String Master into the squad. And Shorekeeper will be on Stellar Symphony. So we will have some additional attack buffs there. Let's see how this one works.
The stage is yours. Lion Graft.
Build up that concerto.
Tear them to pieces.
Liberation.
Obey.
Variable elimination.
Okay, looks like the Chop Chops are a bit of a grouping problem, but thankfully,
Reconfiguration.
we're able to blow them right up. The dragon does seem to do some evasive maneuvers, so do keep that in mind. You might be annoyed by those, like I am right now. My Yinlin outro skill actually ran out, unfortunately, while that thing was dodging me. So we're just going over here. Guy is quite mobile. He's almost too big for the arena. He's almost too big for the arena. And he's like elusive at the same time.
It's our curtain call. Obey me. Please watch and learn.
Variable elimination.
Now, I'm gonna be honest. This team is doing like slightly worse than the Phoebe team was doing in the middle tower. But we are against type resistance, and we are basically getting no buffs at all. So again, this is a completely unbuffed clear.
Conditions up.
And we get it in 2 rotations. So that's what the left side is going to look like with a highly invested team. I would say you might have some struggles with it just based off of how tanky the boss might be, and especially these Chop Chops getting into some funky grouping situations. Zhang Liao's Liberation thankfully does group the enemies on the initial cast, and that's why we were able to hit so many people. But do keep in mind that the Rosia Camellia team will be the #1 way to go with that one. But yeah, if you got the Zhang Liao team ready to go, you got a Jian team ready to go, it'll be all right. If this is too unrelatable, we'll run this with a Camellia Verena Sanhua team. And so the Camellia is missing some ER, so we're gonna have to run some interesting rotations to try to like maintain uptime. Verena has a ton of ER. We'll have Sanhua over here holding Brandt's Echoes. So let's just put her on this with Overture and just 2 flat ER. She's not doing a lot of damage, let's be honest here with this one. Sanhua is basically not a character here. Camellia is gonna be the only one doing damage. Let's see how this team works. AoE situation.
Shackles be gone.
Just do a bit of a combo.
Life is in everything.
Do a little bit of negative edging.
Fruit of evolution.
Stay behind me.
We're getting... Oh my gosh. We're getting thrown around like a toy by these things.
Don't run. Keep the dance going.
And let's just spin to win. It's kind of like we're playing Whimpering Waste over here. You know what I mean?
Let's have fun. Rafting.
Unfortunately, we did not get our outro skill to last for the entire rotation. Little bit unfortunate, but hey.
Let's have fun.
Stay behind me. Frozen blockade. Not worth mentioning.
Bask in the sunlight.
And I do think we might have messed up a little bit there. It should be okay, though.
Behind me. Not worth mentioning.
Reborn from ancient ravine, my blossoms. Self-deceivers.
And we broke the boss. As you can see, this team is doing a little bit slower. A couple of misplays on my end. But
Blossom.
with Camellia getting a lot of, at least, you know, some of the buffs from those heavy attacks, you should be okay in about, you know, a couple of
Stay
rotations.
behind me. Like frigid death.
Luminous energy. I can use some fertilizer.
Okay, watch out for the damage this thing does.
Stay behind me. A change of
Blue
perception.
from ashen shell.
And we'll clear it. I will say, though, that this boss does do a lot of damage. It's got some interesting hitboxes that you should keep in mind. It moves pretty fast, and it's also really big. So you might have some issues. Just work through it. The chop chops at the start aren't too much of a danger. Just don't get grabbed by them. And now, it's time to talk about the last side. We've already explored how kind of just predatory this upgrade is. We're going to clear this without using a Carlotta. We'll use a character like Jinsei instead. Let me just get a build, a random build for the Jeja going. That's a pretty well-built Jinsei. We should have no problems at all with this. The Mech Abomination is kind of just one of the easiest bosses in the game, assuming that you do dodge the attacks. It's got a lot of stuff like that one-hit kill grab move. Not a huge deal.
Art unveiled. So here comes a helper. Life is in everything. The fruit of together we fight. Oh,
How do you forget to play Jinsei? Guys, it's like, I forgot that you're supposed to use, like, the intro skills like this.
sacred life.
Like, feed her every single one.
Instigating. Strike as one. Evil be
And then you shoot out this one, right?
capture the spark.
And you will notice that this is kind of just... I mean, it's one of the easiest fights. Like, maybe I broke its AI, but it's literally sitting here, like, not doing anything. It's literally not doing anything.
Heaven ordained. Banish all vice.
And we're going to finish it off with Jeja over here. That's kind of like it. I will say, the Mech Abomination, again, one of the simplest bosses in the game. I don't think there are going to be too many struggles with it. You can use basically any team comp you want. You don't really have to worry about these bonuses. It is super easy to hit, and you shouldn't have too much of a struggle. I will say, though, overall, this ToA Reset is slightly concerning to me. I don't particularly like how the side towers are designed. I much prefer the layout of the middle one, where other characters on the roster will have the ability to activate the buffs, will have the abilities to gain the full benefits other than just Brant. We covered the characters like Tao Chi, the Janshins, the Yan Wus. I like that. I like how this middle tower is designed. I think it's fine. But this whole situation we have going on over here with overtly specific buffs that are designed for Rosia, that only she can fully activate, and these overtly specific DPS buffs that only apply to Carlotta, that only she can activate, I don't think those are particularly good for the game. And like I said before, this only hurts newer players. You clearly saw on these veteran accounts that I've been using, absolute cakewalks no matter who on the roster you're using. No problems at all. But when it's only the newer players who are trying to access these buffs and like need these buffs to clear, they're the only ones that are getting impacted. And so to me, it's like a bit of a predatory turnoff to the people of the player base that need the buffs the most. And it's something that I pray Kuro changes in the future, because there's no reason to kind of like hurt lower invested characters like this when at high investment, it's simply just easy. You don't even have to think about the buffs at all. And we displayed that with all of the different teams that we used. So with that, let me know what you think, and peace.